Peter, I wanted to pick your brain first and foremost about the Copa America that finished. You covered that 24/7, day in and day out, and then we'll move on to the Euro page. But let's talk about that final. I got to tell you, it's hard enough for me to get Mrs. Totera to sit around and watch a soccer game, but she did it. And she did it, and she was glued like I was watching Chile and Argentina, and her heart broke after she saw Messi miss it. So did mine. Give me your feelings, your emotions on what you saw all unfold on that game, and obviously the comments made by Messi after.
Yeah, I mean, from beginning to end, this was a very dramatic final, and, not just because of the game, obviously what happened after it, but as for the match itself, I don't think people should be too surprised that it was a very cagey affair, because both teams, I think, went out there, and I was a little bit surprised by Argentina's tactics because they obviously have the attacking firepower to basically control and dominate a match. And I was a little bit surprised that Gerardo Martino did not try to sort of put the Argentinian dominance on the match. Chile obviously did very, very well in containing, Lionel Messi and Gonzalo Higuain, apart from that one chance that he missed. But I was a little bit disappointed with Argentina's performance. Because I think they could have done so much better, but taking nothing away from Chile, who I think set out to stop Lionel Messi. That's what they did. They had about 5 or 6 players centrally at all times and tried to force Argentina out wide. They did that successfully, and as we all saw, it went to the penalty shootout again for the second year in a row, and Chile came out on top, and I think rightfully so.
Peter, let's talk about this Chilean side. I've been impressed with them since the day I saw them here at Rogers Center in Toronto playing in a friendly against Brazil. And it was an unbelievable friendly, and I kept my eye on this squad. And my heart still aches for them in that loss in that World Cup in Brazil because I believe they dominated, they controlled that match for the most part. And I thought if they got by Brazil, this was their World Cup to win because they were firing on all cylinders. When is it time that we start giving them credit? When is it time we start saying, hey, they're a threat to win a World Cup very soon, and they have some wonderful players that people need to know about?
Yeah, I think we should start doing that now because, even though I just, spent about a minute saying how Argentina really, didn't live up to expectations, take nothing away from Chile. They've now won 2 Confederation titles, right, back-to-back years, and they've done it with 2 different coaches. And, at the beginning of the tournament, everybody saw what they did against Argentina in that opening game, and they did not look that impressive. But then as the tournament went on, they kind of got to know each other a little bit more, and even through injuries and suspension, without key players like Arturo Vidal in some crucial knockout games, they still managed to push through. And you know what? They deserve all the credit in the world. They have now solidified themselves, I think, as not just, one of the top teams in South America, if not the top team in South America, one of the top in the world, because, just the way that they have set out the team, they play with an identity, the players fit into that identity, and even though on paper the roster or the squad, and whatever you want to call it, does not look as good as in Argentina or even, the likes of Colombia or Uruguay, this is still a fantastic team. They're very well coached, and take nothing away from them. They are probably, at least for my money, one of the top teams in the world.
Before we close off the Copa America page, Peter, let's talk about 2 nations that are going in 2 different directions. One that I'm still shocked about today, that result, Mexico getting absolutely destroyed by Chile, the champs, and then Brazil going home early once again in a tournament. Let's start with Mexico absolutely getting destroyed. And I really believe watching them against Canada, they had an opportunity to really show the rest of the world we're for real, not because it's Canada, but we're for real to really take a long shot in the next World Cup. What went through your mind when you saw that with Mexico?
I was honestly shocked, and I'm sure a lot of people were. I mean, I don't think anybody saw them losing, let alone losing that convincingly. I actually had them in the final, losing to Argentina when I was making my predictions for the tournament, because I thought that, the fact that Juan Carlos Osorio was, just doing so well at the beginning, they didn't concede a single goal until that tournament started. And, of course, the 1-1 draw with Venezuela was the first time they actually failed to win a game under Osorio since he took over. And, just the way that they were playing with such swagger, and, he was bringing in some of the younger players, like, the Hervin Lozanos of the world. They looked so unstoppable. And then when I saw them against Chile, I mean, it almost looked like that as Chile continued to, put more goals past them, they almost tried to beat them at their own game and tried to just, rush up the pitch as fast as they could, try to respond as quickly as possible, and it really went downhill when they tried to do that. That being said, it is one freak result, and it's going to be very interesting to see what Mexico does now in qualifying, in those final two qualifiers, which could actually help out Canada because, they are a little bit upset. There's a little bit of turmoil in there. Maybe they'll want to prove the doubters wrong. But if they can finish this round of qualifying on a high note, then I think we can just write this off as an anomaly. But, again, Mexico just can't seem to get that win in the big game against a top team where they really should belong. And, maybe it's time to ask, assuming they don't end up doing that well in qualifying, what really is wrong? Is it internal? Is it the players? I think it really is a combination of both, but again, still a little bit too early to tell.
Quickly, let's talk about Brazil, Peter. Obviously, they're headed home early once again. A new coach will be entering sooner than later. To me, this is something that is something rare in a Brazil of my lifetime that I've seen in the last 4 or 5 years. It's been a real tough uphill battle for Brazil to be the Brazil that they have been forever and ever. And I look at Chile, I look at Argentina, Uruguay. They're not afraid anymore to go up against Brazil. They're actually looking forward to it because they can expose a lot of their weaknesses.
Yeah, and you just look at the state of the Brazilian national team. You don't have to look any further than their current striker situation. They're calling up players from China. They're calling up 35-year-olds and everything else. And this is a country that has produced, Rivaldo, Ronaldo. I mean, just back in the history of Brazilian soccer, and you've seen so many talented number nines, and they don't have that right now. Gabigol could end up being, that new star striker, but he's still obviously just a teenager, so it's still very early to tell. But it's honestly just shocking to see Brazil in this state right now. Now, Chichi, who's of course the new coach, he's been highly touted. He's won Copa Libertadores with Corinthians. He won a Club World Cup. His resume is quite deep. He is a talented coach. But I think that, the CBF, the Federation in Brazil, they need a complete overhaul. I mean, the young players coming through don't seem to be as talented. They don't seem to be as motivated. They really do need to refresh that entire federation, top to bottom. I don't think it's just the players. I don't think it's just the coach. That can only take you so far. And the fact that other nations are catching up with them, I don't think helps. But they've got to try and fix the federation. And that is something that's going to happen.
So, Peter, we only got a couple minutes here. Let's turn to the Euro page. You talked about a complete overhaul in the Brazil Federation there. Let's talk about a complete overhaul and more that needs to take place in England. They need to look in the mirror. They need to digest, and they need to get rid of that arrogance and say, okay, it's time we start to do what's right, and it's time that we start putting in our heads that we're not the England of 50 years ago. Where do we go next? Your thoughts?
Exactly. Took the words right out of my mouth. And, all you have to do is look at who's being linked with the coaching job. I mean, Glenn Hoddle is apparently going to come in on an interim basis. That's just shocking to me. But, yeah, they definitely need a huge overhaul up there. You have to look no further in terms of how far behind they are than by looking at Iceland. They have more than 400 UEFA A and UEFA B qualified coaches. They only have a population of 330,000. And yet they've been able to develop all these really good players. No matter how bad you are as a kid, they bring them in, they train them, they turn them into very level-headed and very smart players. And I don't think England has that right now. You can bring in any coach you want. Sure, there's a few youngsters coming through that seem to be very promising, but they just don't have the mentality right now, and I think that starts from a young age. And it starts at the youth development, it starts with the coaching. And I just don't think that the culture is there anymore with England. And the problem is, the fan base and the FA, everybody is just, they seem to think that they are number one, and that's just not true.
Absolutely, you're bang on with that, Peter. As we let you go, Peter, obviously we can't let you go without talking about the big matchup coming up, Germany and Italy. There's no love lost between the two nations there, but this time, obviously, all the cards are stacked against Italy. Germany, World Cup champions. They've produced wonderful results in the last number of years, wonderful players, on and on and on. How do you see this all unfolding come Saturday?
You know what, Anthony? I have a sneaking suspicion Italy is going to pull this one out, and I don't think it's too much of a surprise when you look at the history. Germany's never beaten Italy in a major tournament, and just the way Conte's got them playing right now, it's almost a way of saying, okay, we may not be as good as you on paper, but try to beat us. And so far, no team, apart from Ireland against a side that really didn't really try that hard, has beaten this Italy team. The way they played against Spain was magnificent. They sat deep. They absorbed the pressure. The BBC, along with Gianluigi Buffon, were unstoppable. And they were creating chances, too, not just on set pieces, but on counterattacks from open play. I honestly believe that Italy can pull this one out and advance in the semifinals, maybe even the final. Because once they knock out Germany and Spain, then that just says that they are right away a contender for the title.